Good evening. Um, Fear does not rule our lives, basically what our subject is today. I'm pretty sure you heard her scenario all about how fear rules our lives. A lot of the things that she presented to us, some of the things are actually a fear, otherwise called a phobia, which diagnoses every type of fear there is. However, some stuff that was mentioned, for instance, like speeding, this and that, these are rules based around us having a good life and making sure nothing bad happens to us. So I don't really consider that a fear unless they put a phobia behind it. I don't know if anybody else does, but absolutely not I or any of my groups over here. For instance, a lot of phobias, like she said, arachnophobia, is one of the primary fears of spiders. That's also a special type of phobia for, like she said, open spaces, also for closed spaces. I mean, there are tons of phobias out there, even for instance, let's say fear of animals, fear of another person, fear of, like she said, death, this and that. Even though these fears are common to everybody else and you may not think about it throughout your everyday life, it is still there, present and everything else. And until you face that fear, you can never overcome it. And a lot of these fears can be cured, and some of these fears are basically a defense mechanism for us, which is a good thing. One of the main things is fear of like, for instance, something's going to attack you or you being aware of something. I mean, your body's going to react, save you from actually getting hurt, which is a great thing. For instance, a car accident. You see a car swerve your way, what's the first thing you're going to do? The body's going to automatically react, get out of the way, avoid that crash. Sure, a fear of a car hitting you, getting hurt, that's a great fear that you reacted to it. However, you still cannot let those fears control your life. A lot of fears that we have now that if you don't pay attention to them, for instance, not the big ones, but not the small ones, but the big ones, I mean, they could cause bodily harm to you, mentally and physically. For instance, like you said, arachnophobia. I just use that since that's one of the keywords everybody's been using and knows about the spiders. If you're to a point where you're completely afraid of spiders, I mean, literally, you can have pictures, you can project images from your brain to automatically say, I think I said spider there, which I'm pretty sure some of us may have or even dreamt about it to a point where we've woken up in sweats and stuff like that. At that point, you may want to go see some type of doctor to take you a step-by-step process to resolving those fears. My two presenters here, Tabitha and Jolie, will be presenting on, fear is being negative and worrying, and also Tabitha will be presenting on fear is a state of mind. Both of these are great subjects around the fear, as far as how it does not control our lives and how we can resolve that issue if you are allowing fear to control your lives. One main thing I want to get across is, just to give you a heads up, fear is a base of something that we think may happen in the future. It is clearly a mental process which tries to predict the future. In that sense, the reason of fear is a projection of our mind. So keep that in note as my two counterparts come up here and give y'all a reference of why fear doesn't control our lives.
And just to be clear, when debating any comments that they make, when it's our turn, we can debate those, right? Estelle doesn't have to comment on those comments just now.
I think you can interject and rebut those points if you'd like.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to present to you my evaluation and history of fear of failure. Fear of failure is also a phobia, which is called, and I hope I get this correctly, a tetraphobia, which is fear of failure. I'm sure fear has become in all of us, is in all of us at some point in our lives, whether it be with a friend at work, whether it be with family at home, whether it be in your relationships. Fear can cause an effect in any of those situations. It can cause a failure in a relationship because of fear of doing things with your husband or your spouse or your boyfriend or your significant other. When that person wants to go places and you don't want to go with them. Mountain climbing, for instance. You're afraid of climbing the mountain, so you don't go with that person. Your fear causes you to not do that. Your fear in a meeting. You're in a meeting and you don't raise your hand and you ask a question for fear that your question will be not appropriate question, or not even not an appropriate question. Maybe it's not something that you feel comfortable with even saying. But your fear may have caused you another problem down the road because your fear of not asking that question caused you to miss valuable information in that meeting. Not to mention that it makes you, in another person's eye in that meeting, feel not worthy maybe of being called upon for promotion. If you're not able to overcome that fear, but that fear controls you, consumes you. I'm sure several of you guys have been in school and in class, and you're getting ready to take a test, and you work for a week to take this test, and all of a sudden, the test is here, and it's time to take that test. And you can't remember a single thing that you studied because you're afraid to fail, period. You're afraid to fail. So you crunch and you get nervous even though you know the answer. And as soon as that test is done, man, I knew that. But it's too late. You've already failed the test because of your fear. You let that fear hinder you. I'll give you guys a little statistics. Statistics show that 5.3 million American adults ages 18 to 54, about 3.7%, have social fear. This means anyone over 54 could care less what you think. Okay? This means also that social fear typically begins in childhood or adolescence. And as I just said, adolescence peer pressure. How many has had peer pressure in their life? Whether it be peer pressure to wear the same clothing as somebody else does, the Michael Jordan shoes, or the Michael Jackson gloves, or whatever. It's peer pressure is all around. It's around from the time children are in school. We think that we as adults have issues. Go to a high school and talk to a child and deal with some of the pressures that they have to deal with in school. And this is for fear of not being able to fit in a crowd. I do believe that we can overcome our fears, but fear controls us even to correct the fear. So I agree with our opponents who says, yes, that we can overcome our fears. Yes, we can overcome our fears, but it still controls us. It controls us to correct it. It controls us, or it controls us and hinders us not to correct it. But it controls us, whether it be in a good way or whether it be in a bad way. It controls us. So in conclusion, I would just like to say, ask you again, does fear control us? How many believe that? How many of us believe that? Does fear control us? Can it control us in a good way? Can it control us in a bad way? It's still control. Thank you.
I got a question before you go. Are we allowed to interject in the middle of her?
I think the interjections are supposed to wait, but if you agree, then you can. Okay, this is something I should probably already
If you
worked
don't
out,
agree,
but
can you mention it in at your time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, that's better. Okay.
just for timing restraints
Yeah,
for the
that's
hour.
I do agree that we all have our fears. We fear many different things in our lives. Failure is probably the most common one, along with spiders, but we want to impress people in our lives. We want to excel. We want better things for ourselves. I don't think that's necessarily a fear that controls our life. I take that as a momentum, something that pulls me forward, that drives me into life. Fear does not control what I do. I mean, I don't like failure. I